Welcome to Stoic Vivu, where ancient wisdom meets modern life. If you're watching this at 2 a.m. because anxiety won't let you sleep, or if you're stress scrolling during your lunch break trying to find answers, you're exactly where you need to be. Today, we're diving into something that affects millions of us every single day. That constant, nagging worry that seems to follow us everywhere we go. Here's the truth. You're not alone in feeling like worry has taken over your life. In fact, anxiety disorders affect over 40 million adults in the United States alone. That's nearly 1 in 5 people walking around with racing thoughts, sleepless nights, and that awful feeling in their chest that something bad is about to happen. But what if I told you that 2,000 years ago, ancient Roman philosophers discovered practical techniques that actually work better than most of what modern self-help sells us? The Stoics weren't just toga-wearing intellectuals sitting in marble halls discussing abstract ideas. These were real people facing real problems. Emperors dealing with plagues and wars, advisors navigating political intrigue, and everyday citizens trying to make sense of an unpredictable world. Sound familiar? The challenges haven't changed much, just the scenery. What made the Stoics different wasn't that they had fewer problems than us. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, literally ruled during one of Rome's most chaotic periods. Seneca lost his fortune, was exiled, and eventually forced to take his own life. Epictetus was born a slave with a permanent disability. Yet these men developed a system of thinking that allowed them to find peace in the middle of chaos, clarity in confusion, and strength when everything seemed to be falling apart. Over the next several sections, we're going to explore their most powerful techniques, not as dusty historical artifacts, but as living, breathing practices you can start using today. We'll discover why your brain keeps you up at night with worst-case scenarios, how to break free from the worry loop, and most importantly, how to build an unshakable inner foundation that no external circumstance can destroy. From the 3 one-sentence tricks that can stop anxiety in its tracks to understanding why that weird hobby might be the key to your sanity, we're going to cover it all. We'll explore how to find peace even if you're living in the craziest city, why being terrible at something new is actually a sign you're on the right track, and how to stay calm when it feels like your world is imploding. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. This is about fundamentally changing how you relate to uncertainty, fear, and the uncontrollable nature of life itself. The Stoics knew something we've forgotten in our modern rush to control everything. True power comes not from controlling the world around us, but from mastering our responses to it. 1. When life feels completely out of control. You're sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the 405 in Los Angeles, already 20 minutes late for a crucial meeting. Your phone buzzes with another urgent email from your boss, your gas light just came on, and to top it all off, your babysitter just texted that she can't pick up your kids from school. In this moment, it feels like the universe is personally conspiring against you. Everything is spiraling, nothing is going according to plan, and that familiar tightness in your chest tells you that you're completely, utterly out of control. This feeling isn't unique to modern life, though our contemporary world certainly amplifies it. 2,000 years ago, the Roman philosopher Seneca captured this universal human experience with striking clarity. We should never forget Fortune's habit of behaving exactly as she pleases. He wasn't talking about some mystical force. He was describing the fundamental unpredictability of existence itself. The Stoics understood something profound that we often forget in our illusion of control. The vast majority of what happens in our world operates entirely independent of our wishes, plans, or desires. Consider this: you can't control whether your company decides to downsize. You can't control if your flight gets delayed due to weather. You can't control whether that person you're dating texts you back. You can't control the economy, the traffic, other people's opinions, or even whether you'll wake up healthy tomorrow morning. When you really start listing everything outside your control, it becomes overwhelming. No wonder anxiety rates are skyrocketing. We're trying to manage an unmanageable world. Epictetus, who understood powerlessness more intimately than most as someone who spent his early life enslaved, developed the most practical framework for dealing with this reality. He taught that everything in life falls into one of two categories: things that are up to us and things that are not up to us. The list of things not up to us is extensive: our body, property, reputation, career advancement, and essentially all external circumstances. The list of things up to us is remarkably short: our judgments, desires, decisions, and actions. Here's where it gets interesting. That traffic jam on the 405 isn't actually the source of your stress. The traffic is just cars moving slowly, a neutral, objective fact. Your stress comes from your judgment about the traffic. This shouldn't be happening. This is ruining everything. This is a disaster. The Stoics discovered that while we can't control fortune's whims, we have complete authority over how we interpret and respond to them. Let me share a modern example that brings this ancient wisdom to life. Sarah, a marketing executive in Chicago, built her entire identity around being the person who had everything under control. Color-coded calendars, backup plans for her backup plans, every detail meticulously managed. Then, in a single week, her car broke down, her biggest client pulled out of a deal, and her father was diagnosed with a serious illness. She spent sleepless nights trying to figure out how to fix everything, until she literally made herself sick from the stress. It was only when Sarah discovered Stoic philosophy that she began to understand the futility of her approach. She learned to ask herself a simple question before spiraling. Is this up to me? The car breaking down? Not up to her. Her client's decision? Not up to her. Her father's diagnosis? Definitely not up to her. But her response to each situation? Completely within her power. This shift in perspective didn't magically solve Sarah's problems, but it transformed how she approached them. Instead of wasting energy raging against circumstances, she focused on what she could actually influence. She arranged alternative transportation, reached out to new potential clients, and researched the best doctors for her father. Same problems, completely different energy. Marcus Aurelius, who arguably had more responsibility than any of us will ever face as Emperor of Rome, developed a morning practice that helped him embrace this reality. Each day, he would remind himself that he would encounter people who were difficult, dishonest, and frustrating. He would face setbacks, disappointments, and plans going awry. But rather than being pessimistic, this practice was profoundly liberating. By accepting that fortune would do as she pleased, he freed himself from the exhausting illusion that he could control the uncontrollable. The Stoics weren't advocating for passive resignation or apathy. They were incredibly active and engaged with life. Seneca was one of Rome's wealthiest men and an advisor to the emperor. Marcus Aurelius led military campaigns and managed a vast empire. But they understood that effective action comes from accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it were. When you truly internalize that most of life is outside your control, something counterintuitive happens. You actually gain more control. You stop wasting energy on unchangeable externals and redirect that power toward your choices, attitudes, and actions. You become like a sailor who can't control the wind but masters working with whatever wind appears. In essence, the Stoics discovered that the feeling of being out of control isn't caused by external chaos. It's caused by our futile attempt to control the uncontrollable. The moment we accept fortune's independence and focus on our own responses, we reclaim the only power that was ever truly ours. 2, 3 one-sentence tricks to kill anxiety instantly. Imagine you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. in your Manhattan apartment, heart racing, mind spinning through every possible disaster that could unfold tomorrow. Your presentation could bomb, your relationship might fall apart, your health scare could be serious. The anxiety feels like a physical weight on your chest, and no amount of deep breathing seems to help. What if I told you that 3 simple sentences, discovered by ancient philosophers, could break this spiral instantly? The Stoics were masters of condensing profound wisdom into memorable, practical phrases. These weren't just clever sayings. They were cognitive tools designed to shift your mental state in moments of crisis. Think of them as ancient software updates for your anxious brain, debugged and refined over centuries of real-world testing. Let's start with the first mental trick from Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed from slave to sage. It's not things that upset us, it's our opinion about things. This single insight revolutionizes how we understand anxiety. That job interview tomorrow isn't making you anxious. Your thoughts about potential rejection are. The medical test results aren't causing your fear, your imagination of worst-case scenarios is. The thing itself is neutral. Your judgment creates the emotional response. Here's how this works in practice. Jennifer, a software engineer in San Francisco, used to have panic attacks before every code review. Her hands would shake, her mind would blank, and she'd imagine her colleagues discovering she was a fraud. Then she learned to pause and apply Epictetus's principle. The code review itself was just people looking at text on a screen, neutral facts. Her anxiety came from opinions. They'll think I'm incompetent. I'll be exposed as a failure. Once she recognized these as opinions rather than facts, she could examine them objectively. Were they true? Were they helpful? Usually neither. The second game-changing sentence comes from Seneca. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. This wealthy Roman advisor noticed something fascinating about human nature. We're incredibly creative when it comes to inventing future catastrophes. Our brains run disaster simulations on repeat, each scenario more elaborate than the last. But here's the kicker. Most of what we worry about never actually happens, and when bad things do occur, they're rarely as devastating as we imagined. Consider Michael, a restaurant owner in Boston who spent months paralyzed by anxiety about his business failing during an economic downturn. He imagined bankruptcy, losing his house, disappointing his family, a complete life collapse. He suffered through these scenarios hundreds of times in his mind. When business did slow down, the reality was far different from his catastrophic fantasies. Yes, he had to cut some costs and work longer hours, but he adapted, survived, and eventually thrived. He realized he had tortured himself for months over imaginary outcomes while missing the opportunity to prepare practically for real challenges. Seneca's insight reveals that anxiety is essentially a misuse of our imagination. We have this incredible ability to visualize and plan, but anxiety hijacks it for destructive purposes. When you catch yourself spiraling into future disasters, remember, you're suffering from fiction, not fact. The story hasn't been written yet, so why torture yourself with the worst possible draft? The third and perhaps most empowering sentence comes from Marcus Aurelius, who wrote in his personal journal, "Today I escaped my anxiety. No, wait. I discarded it because it was within me." This realization that anxiety isn't something that happens to us but something we create is simultaneously uncomfortable and liberating. If anxiety is internal, we can't blame external circumstances. But if it's internal, we also have the power to change it. Marcus Aurelius discovered this while dealing with unimaginable pressures. Leading Rome through plague, war, and political upheaval, he had every reason to be consumed by anxiety. Instead, he recognized that his anxiety wasn't caused by these external crises. It was his internal response to them. By taking ownership of his anxiety rather than seeing himself as its victim, he could work with it, understand it, and ultimately transcend it. These three sentences work together as a complete anxiety interruption system. When you feel anxiety rising, first apply Epictetus. Separate the actual event from your opinion about it. What's the objective situation versus your interpretation? Next, use Seneca's insight. Recognize that you're probably suffering from imaginary scenarios rather than present reality. Finally, embrace Marcus Aurelius's ownership. Acknowledge that the anxiety is your creation, which means you have the power to uncreate it. The beauty of these tools is their immediate applicability. You don't need years of meditation practice or expensive therapy, though both can be valuable. You just need to remember 3 sentences and apply them in the moment. They work whether you're facing a minor daily stress or a major life crisis, whether you're in a boardroom in New York or stuck in traffic in Los Angeles. To truly master these techniques, practice them during small anxieties before you need them for big ones. Notice yourself getting worked up about being late? Perfect practice opportunity. Worried about a text that hasn't been returned? Apply the 3 sentences. Like any skill, the more you practice when the stakes are low, the more naturally these tools will come when you really need them. Ultimately, these 3 Stoic sentences reveal a profound truth. Anxiety is not your master but your creation, and what you create, you can transform. 3. How to turn your worst day into your best day. The call comes at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. You're fired. Budget cuts, they say, are nothing personal. By noon, you're carrying a cardboard box to your car in downtown Chicago. 10 years of career building reduced to a pile of desk trinkets. On the drive home, your car starts making an expensive sound. Then your phone lights up. Your teenager is in the principal's office. Again, most people would write this off as one of the worst days of their lives. The Stoics would see it differently. They'd see it as an opportunity to become legendary. This isn't toxic positivity or pretending bad things are secretly good. The Stoics were ruthlessly realistic about life's hardships. What they discovered, however, was a transformative framework that turns life's worst moments into training grounds for excellence. They called these opportunities to practice the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Every setback, every crisis, every disaster becomes a chance to embody these qualities and emerge stronger than before. Let's start with wisdom. the ability to see clearly and make good decisions even in chaos. When everything falls apart, most people's thinking becomes clouded by emotion. They make rash decisions, lash out, or freeze entirely. But wisdom asks, what can I learn from this? What's the next right action? That job loss isn't just a crisis. It's data about your industry, your skills, and your network. It's information you can use. Take David, a financial analyst in New York who got laid off the same day his wife announced she was pregnant with twins. Instead of panicking, he practiced wisdom. He analyzed his situation objectively. Severance package details, unemployment benefits, health insurance options. He researched growing industries, identified transferable skills, and discovered that his expertise in data analysis was desperately needed in healthcare technology. 6 months later, he was earning 30% more in a field with better stability and growth potential. The worst day became a forced upgrade he never would have pursued otherwise. Courage comes next, not the absence of fear, but right action despite fear. When life knocks you down, courage is what gets you back up. It's making the difficult phone calls, having the hard conversations, and facing the reality you've been avoiding. Courage transforms victimhood into agency. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? Consider Lisa, a small business owner in Los Angeles whose restaurant burned down in a kitchen fire. Insurance covered some losses, but not the months of closure or the customer base she'd built over the years. Fear whispered that she should give up, find a safe corporate job, stop risking everything. But courage responded differently. She started a food truck while rebuilding, turning necessity into innovation. She used social media to keep customers engaged, turning disaster into a comeback story that her community rallied behind. When she reopened, lines stretched around the block. People love supporting courage in action. Justice, the virtue of fairness and service to others, might seem strange to practice during a personal crisis. But the Stoics understood that focusing outward during our worst moments paradoxically helps us most. When we're suffering, we can become bitter and self-focused, or we can ask, how can my struggle serve others? How can I remain a good person despite bad circumstances? Marcus Aurelius exemplified this during the Antonine Plague that devastated Rome. While dealing with personal loss and empire-wide catastrophe, he focused on justice, ensuring fair distribution of resources, maintaining the rule of law, and protecting the vulnerable. He transformed personal anguish into public service. Modern example: Rachel, a nurse in Boston who was diagnosed with cancer, started a support group for healthcare workers facing serious illness. By helping others navigate what she was experiencing, she found meaning in her struggle and built a community that sustained her through treatment. Temperance, self-discipline, and moderation becomes crucial when everything feels extreme. Bad days trigger our worst impulses: rage, despair, self-destruction. We want to numb the pain with excess, alcohol, spending, isolation, or lashing out. Temperance says, feel the emotions, but don't let them drive. Maintain your standards, especially when it's hardest. James, a tech executive in Seattle, discovered his business partner had been embezzling funds, leaving their startup bankrupt and James personally liable for significant debts. The temptation to rage, to seek revenge, to drink himself into oblivion was overwhelming. Instead, he practiced temperance. He allowed himself to feel the anger without acting on it. He maintained his workout routine, ate healthy meals, and kept regular sleep hours. This discipline kept him functional while he worked through legal proceedings and rebuilt. His temperance impressed investors who backed his next venture, specifically citing his grace under pressure. The magic happens when you practice all four virtues simultaneously. Wisdom shows you the path forward. Courage gives you the strength to walk it. Justice keeps you connected to others and your values. Temperance ensures you don't self-destruct along the way. Together, they transform your worst day into a masterclass in character development. This isn't about pretending hardship is pleasant. The Stoics acknowledged that losing your job sucks, illness is frightening, and betrayal hurts deeply. But they also recognized that these moments reveal and build character like nothing else can. A life without challenges produces no strength, no resilience, no depth. Your worst days are invitations to become who you're capable of being. The next time life serves you a particularly bitter cocktail of misfortune, remember, this is your Olympic moment. While others crumble, you have the tools to transform crisis into triumph. Not through denial or false optimism, but through the deliberate practice of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Your worst day doesn't define you, how you respond to it does. 4. The 5-minute fix for racing thoughts at 3 a.m. It's 3:17 a.m. in your Philadelphia apartment. You've been staring at the ceiling for 2 hours, mind racing through tomorrow's presentation, last week's argument, next month's bills, and somehow also that embarrassing thing you said in 7th grade. Your thoughts are like a hamster wheel powered by anxiety, spinning faster with each rotation. You've tried counting sheep, deep breathing, even that meditation app, but nothing stops the mental marathon. The ancient Stoics faced the same 3 a.m. demons, and they developed a practice so effective that Marcus Aurelius used it to govern an empire while battling insomnia. The Stoics called this practice prosoke, continuous attention or mindfulness. But unlike modern mindfulness, which often focuses on emptying the mind, Stoic mindfulness is about directing your thoughts with intention. Think of it as the difference between trying to stop a river, impossible, versus building channels to direct its flow, practical. Your racing thoughts aren't the enemy, your lack of direction for them is. Here's the 5-minute protocol that transforms mental chaos into clarity. First, acknowledge what's happening without judgment. Those racing thoughts aren't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. Even Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, filled journals with his middle-of-the-night anxieties. He wrote about fears of death, worries about his children, concerns about making wrong decisions. The difference? He had a system for processing these thoughts rather than being processed by them. Step 1 takes exactly 1 minute, mental inventory. Instead of fighting your thoughts, become a neutral observer. What exactly is your mind cycling through? Write it down if needed, grab your phone or a notepad and create a simple list. Work deadline, mom's health, credit card bill, that weird comment from your coworker. Don't analyze or solve anything yet, just acknowledge what's spinning. This act of observation alone often slows the wheel. Amanda, a marketing director in Denver, discovered this technique after months of 3 a.m. panic sessions about her team's performance. She'd lie awake creating elaborate scenarios of projects failing, clients leaving, her reputation crumbling. When she started doing mental inventories, she noticed something fascinating. It was usually the same 5 or 6 worries recycling endlessly. By naming them, they lost some of their power. The monster under the bed is always scarier before you look. Step 2. Another minute. Categorize using the fundamental Stoic question, is this up to me? Go through your inventory and mark each item. Your presentation content and preparation? Up to you. Whether the client likes it? Not up to you. Your mother's medical treatment? Not up to you. Calling her tomorrow to show support? Up to you. This isn't about dismissing concerns, but about clarifying where to direct your energy. The ancient Stoics developed this practice through hard experience. Seneca suffered from chronic insomnia, likely connected to his political anxieties serving under the unstable Emperor Nero. He learned to examine his thoughts each night, sorting them like a judge reviewing cases. Which deserved his attention, which were outside his jurisdiction. This mental sorting became his path to peace. Step 3 takes 2 minutes. Evening reflection, a practice Marcus Aurelius performed religiously. Review your day not with criticism but with curiosity. What went well? What could improve? What lessons emerged? This isn't about beating yourself up over mistakes, but about extracting wisdom from experience. The goal is to transform vague anxiety into specific understanding. Here's the crucial insight. Racing thoughts at 3 a.m. are often your mind's attempt to process unfinished business from the day. By conducting this review, you're completing that processing consciously rather than letting it run wild in your subconscious. Think of it as closing all the open tabs in your mental browser. Robert, an ER physician in Houston, used this technique to manage the crushing stress of pandemic shifts. After witnessing trauma all day, his nights were haunted by the faces of patients he couldn't save. The evening reflection helped him process these experiences constructively. He'd acknowledge what was beyond his control, the virus's severity, resource limitations, while recognizing what he did control, his skill, compassion, and dedication. This practice didn't eliminate the difficulty, but prevented it from consuming his nights. The final minute involves tomorrow's preparation, not detailed planning but mental readiness. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, or premeditation of evils, though it's more practical than it sounds. Simply acknowledge what challenges tomorrow might bring and affirm your capability to handle them. Tomorrow I may face difficult customers. I'll respond with patience. The meeting might not go as planned. I'll adapt with grace. This isn't pessimism but preparation. By acknowledging potential difficulties, you remove their element of surprise. Your 3 a.m. anxiety often stems from fear of the unexpected. By expecting challenges and preparing your response, you transform uncertainty into readiness. The complete 5-minute practice inventory, categorization, reflection, and preparation works because it gives your racing mind a job to do. Instead of spinning uselessly, your thoughts become tools for understanding and growth. You're not trying to force sleep, but creating the mental conditions where sleep becomes possible. The Stoics understood that a disciplined mind is a peaceful mind. Not disciplined in the sense of rigid control, but in the sense of directed purpose. Your thoughts will race, that's their nature, but you can choose whether they race in circles or toward resolution. This 5-minute practice transforms insomnia from wasted suffering into productive self-examination. When you find yourself staring at the ceiling tonight, remember, you're in good company. The greatest philosophers in history battled the same 3 a.m. demons. They won not by fighting their thoughts, but by directing them. 5 minutes of intentional practice can transform your longest nights into opportunities for growth. 5. Why you're making everything harder than it is. Your coworker sends a brief email. We need to talk about the project. Instantly, your mind constructs an elaborate narrative. They hate your work. You're about to be removed from the team. Your career is over. You spend the next 3 hours crafting defensive arguments, imagining confrontations, and updating your resume. When you finally meet, they simply want to adjust the deadline by 2 days. You've just spent half your day fighting a battle that existed only in your imagination. Sound familiar? The Stoics identified this self-sabotaging pattern over 2,000 years ago. We don't just experience events. We create entire fictional universes around them, usually tragic ones. Epictetus put it bluntly, events themselves are neutral, but our judgments about them create our reality. That terse email wasn't threatening. Your story about the email was. You're not living in reality. You're living in the dramatic screenplay your mind constantly writes. Consider how this plays out in everyday situations. Traffic isn't just slow, it's a personal attack on your schedule. Your partner forgetting to text back isn't a simple distraction. It's proof they don't care. A mistake at work isn't a learning opportunity. It's evidence of your fundamental inadequacy. We transform neutral events into emotional catastrophes through the stories we tell ourselves. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, recognized this tendency in himself. He wrote reminders in his personal journal to see things as they truly are, stripped of dramatic interpretation. A military setback wasn't a disaster. It was simply current troop positions requiring adjustment. A political betrayal wasn't devastating treachery. It was one person acting according to their nature. By removing the emotional narrative, he could respond effectively rather than reactively. Let me share how this manifests in modern life. Sarah, a project manager in San Francisco, nearly destroyed her career through catastrophic thinking. When her boss scheduled a performance review, she spent 2 weeks convinced she was being fired. She interpreted every interaction through this lens. A missed greeting meant confirmation. A canceled meeting meant they were planning her termination. She became so anxious and defensive that she actually created performance issues where none existed. The review? Her boss wanted to discuss a promotion. Her story nearly made her fear a reality. The Stoics taught that we experience 2 levels of reality: the objective facts and our subjective interpretation. The objective fact: your presentation had technical difficulties. Your subjective interpretation: I'm a failure who can't even handle basic technology. The objective fact: your friend canceled dinner plans. Your subjective interpretation: nobody wants to spend time with me. See the gap? That gap is where unnecessary suffering lives. This pattern extends beyond individual incidents to entire life philosophies. We tell ourselves stories about what success means, what happiness requires, and what others think of us. These stories become invisible prisons. I can't be happy until I make 6 figures. I'm not successful unless I own property. People will reject me if they know the real me. None of these are facts. They're stories we've repeated so often we mistake them for reality. The solution isn't positive thinking or denial. The Stoics were rigorously honest about reality. Instead, they advocated for what they called objective representation, seeing things as they actually are before adding interpretation. That delayed response to your text is just a delayed response, not evidence of relationship problems. That rejection letter is just a rejection letter, not proof of your unworthiness. Here's a practical exercise the Stoics used. Describe situations using only factual, neutral language. Instead of, "My presentation was a disaster," try, "I presented for 30 minutes. The projector malfunctioned twice. I answered 7 questions." Instead of, "Everyone hates my idea," try, "3 people expressed concerns. 2 supported it. 4 haven't responded yet." This isn't minimizing problems. It's seeing them accurately so you can respond appropriately. Michael, an entrepreneur in Miami, transformed his business using this principle. He was paralyzed by the story that failure means I'm worthless. Every setback felt existential. When he learned to separate facts from interpretation, everything changed. A product launch that didn't meet projections became data for improvement, not a personal indictment. Customer complaints became feedback, not attacks. By removing the dramatic overlay, he could focus on solutions rather than self-flagellation. The Stoics understood that our interpretations often add unnecessary complexity. Seneca noted that we suffer more in imagination than reality, precisely because our stories are usually worse than actual events. We create elaborate problems that require elaborate solutions, when often the situation is simple and requires only simple action. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless or indifferent. Emotions are natural and valuable. But there's a difference between feeling disappointed about a setback and creating a narrative where that setback defines your worth as a human being. The first is healthy processing. The second is unnecessary suffering. The most powerful realization is this: if you're creating the story, you can rewrite it. Not into fantasy, but into accuracy. That critical feedback isn't an attack, it's information for growth. That ended relationship isn't a failure, it's 2 people recognizing incompatibility. That career change isn't starting over, it's applying accumulated wisdom to a new context. When you strip away the dramatic narratives and see situations clearly, life becomes remarkably simpler. Problems that seemed insurmountable reveal themselves as manageable tasks. Emotional catastrophes become practical challenges. You stop fighting imaginary dragons and start dealing with actual situations. The Stoics knew what we keep forgetting. Life is hard enough without our embellishments. See clearly, respond wisely, and save your energy for challenges that actually exist. 6. The weird habit that saves your sanity. A high-powered attorney in Manhattan spends her Sunday afternoons building intricate model trains. A tech CEO in Seattle takes up competitive yo-yoing. A stressed-out surgeon in Atlanta becomes obsessed with growing the perfect tomato. Their colleagues think they've lost their minds. In reality, they've found the secret that kept ancient philosophers sane through crisis, war, and political upheaval. The transformative power of having a completely pointless hobby. The Stoics, often misunderstood as stern and joyless, were actually passionate advocates for what Seneca called relaxation of the mind. But not the mindless scrolling or Netflix binging we call relaxation today. They understood that the mind needs active rest, engagement in activities completely divorced from your primary responsibilities. This isn't escapism. It's mental cross-training that prevents the fractures Seneca warned about in overworked minds. Marcus Aurelius, managing an empire in crisis, made time for what seems absurd. He went boar hunting. Not for food or necessity, but for the pure engagement of tracking, patience, and physical challenge. Imagine the most powerful man in the world spending precious hours pursuing wild pigs through forests. His advisors probably thought he was wasting time. In reality, he was preserving his sanity and judgment for the decisions that affected millions. The ancient sources tell us about other Stoic hobbies that would seem bizarre to our productivity-obsessed culture. Socrates, the philosophical predecessor to the Stoics, played the flute and engaged in games with neighborhood children. Picture this renowned thinker sitting cross-legged in an Athens street, playing simple melodies or tossing stones with 8-year-olds. Cato the Younger, known for his moral severity, ended his days drinking wine and discussing philosophy with friends, not as networking, but as pure enjoyment. Why did these disciplined thinkers prioritize seemingly frivolous activities? Because they understood what neuroscience now confirms. The mind requires varied stimulation to maintain optimal function. When you focus intensely on one area, your career, your problems, your responsibilities, you create mental grooves that become ruts. A hobby forces your brain to build new neural pathways, providing relief to overtaxed circuits. Consider Jennifer, a financial analyst in Chicago who developed chronic anxiety from constantly monitoring market fluctuations. Therapy helped, but the real breakthrough came when she randomly joined a pottery class. Something about centering clay on a wheel, requiring total focus but zero financial implications, created mental space she hadn't experienced in years. Her hands covered in mud, creating imperfect bowls nobody needed. She found peace that eluded her in yoga studios and meditation apps. The key is choosing hobbies that engage different faculties than your work. If you think for a living, choose something physical. If you work with your hands, try something intellectual. If you deal with people all day, find a solitary pursuit. If you work alone, join a recreational sports league. The contrast is crucial. It's not rest if it uses the same mental muscles. Seneca, who wrote prolifically about philosophy while managing vast wealth and navigating deadly palace intrigue, found restoration in what we'd now call creative writing. Not philosophical treatises, but tragedies, dramatic plays about mythological figures. After days of real political drama, he'd spend evenings crafting fictional drama. The controlled creation of imaginary problems provided relief from uncontrollable real ones. Modern research validates what the Stoics intuited. Hobbies reduce cortisol, improve cognitive function, and increase resilience to stress. But there's a deeper philosophical point. A hobby reminds you that you're more than your productivity, more than your problems, more than your role. That attorney building model trains isn't just a lawyer. She's a human being with the capacity for pure, purposeless joy. The resistance to hobbies in our culture is telling. I don't have time for hobbies, we say, while spending hours doom scrolling or worrying about things beyond our control. We've internalized the toxic idea that every moment must be productive, optimized, and monetized. The Stoics would find this absurd. They understood that time spent in purposeless joy is not wasted. It's invested in mental sustainability. Take Robert, an emergency room physician in Phoenix who was burning out after years of high-stress shifts. He tried all the standard advice: exercise, meditation, and better sleep hygiene. Nothing worked until he discovered woodworking. Every weekend, he'd disappear into his garage to build furniture nobody asked for. His wife initially resented this waste of time, but she noticed something. He returned from his workshop calmer, more patient, better able to handle the chaos of his job. The pointless hobby was saving his career and marriage. The Stoics would emphasize that your hobby should be genuinely recreational, not a side hustle, not networking, not skill building for career advancement. The moment your hobby becomes another source of pressure or productivity, it loses its restorative power. That's why Marcus Aurelius went boar hunting instead of practicing military tactics. The point was to engage in something completely separate from his responsibilities. Here's what makes hobbies particularly powerful for anxiety and worry. They provide concrete evidence that you can create, accomplish, and enjoy things outside your primary concerns. When work feels overwhelming, your model train layout reminds you that you have competence beyond spreadsheets. When relationships feel complicated, your tomato garden proves you can nurture growth. When everything feels chaotic, your yo-yo tricks demonstrate mastery over something, however small. The Stoics knew that a mind without diverse interests becomes brittle, prone to fracture under pressure. A hobby isn't frivolous self-indulgence, it's practical mental hygiene. It's building resilience through joy, maintaining sanity through purposeless play. In a world that demands constant optimization, the most radical thing you can do is spend time on something perfectly, gloriously pointless. 7. How to find peace in a crazy city. The subway screeches to another unexplained halt between stations. You're pressed against strangers, breathing recycled air, checking your phone to see you're now definitely late. Above ground, sirens wail, construction hammers, and someone's car alarm has been going off for 20 minutes. Your tiny apartment costs half your income. Your upstairs neighbor apparently trains elephants, and you haven't seen an actual tree in weeks. City life feels like being trapped in a concrete pressure cooker, and everyone keeps saying you need to get away to find peace. But Marcus Aurelius, ruling the most chaotic city in the ancient world, discovered something revolutionary. True peace isn't found by escaping your environment, it's cultivated within it. The emperor who could have built palaces anywhere, who owned country estates and could afford any retreat, wrote something shocking in his private journal. People seek retreats for themselves in the countryside, by the sea, in the mountains, and you too have made it your habit to long for such things. But this is altogether unphilosophic, for it is always possible for you to retire into yourself. He called this the inner citadel, an unassailable fortress of peace that exists within every person, accessible anywhere, anytime. This wasn't philosophical abstraction for Marcus. He wrote these words while managing Rome's congestion, political intrigue, and urban chaos that make modern Manhattan look peaceful. Yet he discovered that external escape often disappoints because, as he noted, wherever you go, you take yourself with you. That anxious, stressed, overwhelmed self doesn't magically transform just because you're looking at mountains instead of skyscrapers. Consider Maria, a nurse in downtown Los Angeles who spent years believing peace required escaping the city. Every vacation was an attempt to find herself in quiet places. But she noticed a pattern. Within days of returning, all her stress returned. The expensive retreats provided temporary relief but no lasting change. Then she discovered Stoic philosophy and began building her inner citadel. She learned to find moments of profound peace during her commute, in hospital break rooms, even in the chaos of the emergency department. The Stoics developed specific practices for urban peace that work as well in modern cities as in ancient Rome. First, they recognized that cities offer unique opportunities for philosophical practice. Every annoying interaction becomes a chance to practice patience. Every delay tests your ability to accept what you can't control. Every crowded space challenges you to maintain inner calm despite external chaos. Cities aren't obstacles to peace. They're training grounds for it. Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called view from above, a mental exercise where you imagine seeing your city from great height. Try it. Picture your city from an airplane's perspective. See the millions of people, each with their own concerns, struggles, hopes. Your traffic jam becomes a tiny cluster of lights. Your stressful office becomes one floor in one building among thousands. This isn't minimizing your experience, but providing perspective that breaks the tunnel vision of urban stress. The inner citadel isn't built through isolation, but through intentional practices you can do anywhere. Take Thomas, a Wall Street trader who transformed his relationship with New York City. Instead of seeing his commute as dead time, he made it his philosophical practice period. On the subway, he'd review Stoic principles. Walking between meetings became meditation in motion. His lunch break transformed from mindless scrolling to reading philosophy in Bryant Park. Same city, same job, completely different experience. Seneca, living in Rome's elite neighborhoods while serving in Nero's court, understood urban overwhelm intimately. His solution wasn't escape, but integration. He wrote letters to friends about finding profound quiet within Rome's chaos by shifting attention inward. He'd attend raucous dinner parties but maintain philosophical reflection. He navigated political danger while cultivating inner peace. His secret: recognizing that peace is a skill, not a location. Here's a practical urban peace practice from the Stoics. The evening review. Before bed, instead of replaying the day's stresses, examine them philosophically. That rude subway encounter? An opportunity to practice not taking things personally. The construction noise? A reminder that cities constantly change and grow. The expensive rent? The price of accessing opportunities unavailable elsewhere. This isn't toxic positivity, but reframing challenges ASA philosophical curriculum. Cities also offer unique advantages for Stoic practice that the ancients recognized. The diversity of people provides endless opportunities to practice universal humanity, seeing the common struggles beneath surface differences. The pace forces you to prioritize what truly matters. The anonymity allows you to practice virtue without seeking recognition. The constant change reminds you of life's impermanence. Lisa, a teacher in Boston, discovered this during lockdown when leaving the city became impossible. Forced to find peace without escape, she created micro-retreats throughout her day. 5 minutes of morning reflection before checking her phone. A mindful walk around the block between virtual classes. Evening philosophy reading instead of news scrolling. She realized the city hadn't been preventing her peace, her approach to city life had. The Stoics would argue that urban peace is actually more valuable than rural tranquility because it's more robust. Anyone can feel peaceful in perfect surroundings. But developing peace amid sirens and subway delays? That's unshakable. It's like training at high altitude. When you can find calm in city chaos, you can find it anywhere. Marcus Aurelius concluded that we don't need to escape our circumstances to find peace. We need to transform our relationship with them. Your city apartment becomes a philosopher's cell. Your commute becomes a moving meditation. Your urban challenges become opportunities for growth. The inner citadel isn't built by fleeing to the mountains, but by standing firm where you are, creating an internal sanctuary that no external chaos can breach. The city doesn't steal your peace, it reveals whether you've truly built it. 8. Why being bad at things is actually good. You walk into the yoga class, and everyone else flows through poses like water while you wobble and fall. You join a pottery workshop, and your bowl looks like something a toddler made during a tantrum. You try to learn Spanish, and native speakers wince at your pronunciation. Every instinct screams to quit, to protect your ego, to stick with things you already do well. But Epictetus, the Stoic teacher who transformed from slave to sage, revealed a counterintuitive truth. Being willing to look foolish is the secret doorway to wisdom and growth. If you want to improve, Epictetus taught, be content to be thought stupid or foolish. This wasn't motivational fluff from someone naturally gifted. Epictetus had a permanent disability, started life enslaved, and had to learn philosophy while serving a cruel master. He understood intimately that growth requires embracing incompetence. Yet most of us do everything possible to avoid appearing unskilled, unknowledgeable, or awkward, and in doing so, we lock ourselves into permanent mediocrity. Consider what happens when we refuse to be bad at things. We stay in careers that bore us because we're already competent. We avoid new relationships because we might say something awkward. We don't try new activities because we might look ridiculous. We become prisoners of our existing competencies, living smaller and smaller lives to protect our ego from the discomfort of a beginner's mind. The Stoics understood that this ego protection is actually self-sabotage. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, regularly put himself in positions where he was the student, not the master. He studied philosophy with teachers who corrected him, practiced rhetoric where he made mistakes, and learned military tactics where seasoned generals knew more. The most powerful man in Rome made himself voluntarily powerless in learning situations because he understood that's where growth happens. Take Jessica, a successful corporate lawyer in Washington, D.C., who realized at 40 that she'd built an impressive career she hated. She dreamed of becoming a therapist but was terrified of starting over. Going from senior partner to psychology student meant trading expertise for ignorance, respect for rookie status. For months, she stayed trapped by the fear of being bad at something new. When she finally enrolled in graduate school, the experience was humbling, struggling with concepts 20-somethings grasped easily, fumbling through practice sessions, feeling constantly out of her depth. But something magical happened. Embracing her incompetence freed her. Without the pressure to appear expert, she could actually learn. 3 years later, she runs a thriving practice helping other professionals navigate career transitions. The philosophical principle here goes deeper than just skill acquisition. The Stoics taught that wisdom begins with acknowledging ignorance. Socrates, their philosophical predecessor, claimed his only wisdom was knowing that he knew nothing. This isn't false modesty but profound insight. When you think you know everything, learning stops. When you embrace not knowing, infinite growth becomes possible. Our modern culture makes this particularly difficult. Social media showcases everyone's highlight reel, creating the illusion that everyone else has everything figured out. We see the yoga instructor's perfect pose, not their years of falling. We see the successful entrepreneur's IPO, not their failed ventures. This curated perfection makes our own beginners' fumbling feel uniquely shameful when it's actually universally necessary. Here's what the Stoics knew that we forget. Competence is not a fixed trait but a temporary state. Marcus Aurelius wrote about observing how all things change, including our own abilities. The expert surgeon was once a medical student who couldn't properly hold a scalpel. The master chef once burned water. The eloquent speaker once stuttered through presentations. Competence is simply incompetence that keeps showing up. David, a software engineer in Austin, discovered this principle when his company assigned him to lead presentations. Public speaking terrified him. His voice shook, he forgot points, and he could see colleagues cringing. His first instinct was to delegate this responsibility, stay in his coding comfort zone. Instead, he embraced Epictetus's teaching. He volunteered for more presentations, joined Toastmasters, and even did open mic nights at comedy clubs. He was terrible for months. Audiences didn't laugh at his jokes. His presentations confused people. But he noticed something. Each failure taught him something success never could. Within a year, he became his company's go-to presenter. More importantly, conquering this fear gave him the confidence to tackle other challenges. The Stoics would add another dimension. Being bad at things builds character virtues. It requires courage to risk looking foolish. It demands temperance to persist despite slow progress. It practices justice by showing empathy for other beginners. It develops wisdom through direct experience. Every time you're willing to be bad at something, you're not just learning a skill, you're strengthening your character. This principle applies beyond learning new skills. It includes being bad at difficult conversations, inexperienced at setting boundaries, and clumsy at expressing emotions. Growth in any area requires a willingness to fumble through the learning process. The alternative is stagnation disguised as competence. The fear of looking foolish is really the fear of judgment, and the Stoics had an answer for that too. Epictetus taught that others' opinions are outside your control and therefore not your concern. If someone judges you for being a beginner, that reveals their character, not yours. Besides, most people are too worried about their own performance to closely scrutinize yours. Ultimately, being bad at things is the tax we pay for becoming good at things. The Stoics understood this exchange and paid it gladly. They knew that a life limited to existing competencies is a shrinking life. Every time you choose comfort over growth, expertise over learning, looking good over becoming better, you choose a smaller existence. But when you embrace being bad at things, you unlock unlimited potential. The question isn't whether you'll look foolish, you will. The question is whether you'll let that stop you from becoming who you could be. 9. How to be unshakable when everything's falling apart. The phone call comes at 2 p.m. on a regular Thursday. Your mother has been in an accident. As you rush to the hospital in Miami traffic, your boss texts that the company is restructuring. Your position is being eliminated. At the hospital, you learn your mother needs expensive surgery. Your insurance won't cover it all. Your teenager calls crying from school. Your world, stable just hours ago, is now in complete freefall. This is the moment that defines you, not the crisis itself, but who you become within it. Marcus Aurelius wrote about being like a rocky headland that waves crash against endlessly. The waves don't stop coming, but eventually the sea grows calm around the immovable stone. He wasn't writing poetry, he was describing a practical philosophy forged in crisis. During his reign, Rome faced a plague that killed millions, including his own children. Germanic tribes threatened the borders. His most trusted general betrayed him. Yet historical accounts describe him as remarkably steady, making clear decisions while others panicked, maintaining principles while surrounded by chaos. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine. The Stoics were remarkably honest about life's difficulties. Marcus Aurelius's private journal reveals deep grief over his losses, frustration with political challenges, and anxiety about decisions affecting millions. The difference is that he didn't let these emotions control his actions. He felt them fully while remaining functionally steady, like that rock feeling every wave but not being moved from its foundation. The key to becoming unshakable isn't eliminating emotions but changing your relationship with them. Think of emotions as weather passing through your internal landscape. A storm can be acknowledged, experienced, even appreciated for its power, without letting it determine your actions. You can feel terror about job loss while calmly updating your resume. You can grieve a diagnosis while methodically researching treatment options. You can experience rage at injustice while responding with measured wisdom. Consider Anna, a restaurant owner in Brooklyn who watched her life's work disappear during the pandemic. In 1 month, she lost 80% of revenue, laid off staff who were like family, and faced bankruptcy. Her husband was high risk, so she couldn't even hug her own children. Many in her position crumbled, and who could blame them? But Anna had been practicing Stoic principles for years. She allowed herself to cry every morning, real, body-shaking sobs for exactly 10 minutes. Then she would stand up, wash her face, and ask, "What can I actually control today?" This question became her anchor. She couldn't control lockdown orders, but she could pivot to takeout. She couldn't rehire everyone, but she could help them file for unemployment. She couldn't save her original restaurant, but she could negotiate with landlords. While competitors raged on social media or disappeared into depression, Anna took one small action after another. 18 months later, she had a thriving delivery business and a smaller, more sustainable restaurant. The crisis hadn't broken her. It had revealed her unshakable core. The Stoics identified specific practices for developing this inner stability. First is the discipline of perception, seeing situations clearly without adding catastrophic interpretation. Your job loss is just job loss, not proof the universe hates you. Your health challenge is a medical condition requiring treatment, not cosmic punishment. This isn't minimizing real problems, but preventing them from becoming larger through dramatic narrative. Second is the discipline of action, doing what you can with what you have where you are. When everything's falling apart, the mind wants to either freeze or flail. The Stoic asks, what is the next right action? Not the perfect action, not the action that fixes everything, just the next right step. Call the doctor, file the paperwork, have the difficult conversation, send the email. Action creates momentum, and momentum creates stability. Third is the discipline of will, accepting what you cannot control while fully engaging with what you can. This isn't passive resignation but active engagement with reality. Marcus Aurelius compared it to a fire that consumes whatever falls into it, growing stronger from obstacles. Your crisis becomes fuel for growth rather than destruction. Robert, an investment banker in Charlotte, discovered these principles when his son was diagnosed with leukemia. His initial response was pure panic, researching survival rates at 3 a.m., catastrophizing about the future, oscillating between denial and despair. But his wife, who'd been studying Stoicism, introduced him to Marcus Aurelius's writings. Slowly, Robert learned to be the rock his family needed. He couldn't control the cancer, but he could control their response to it. He became the steady presence in hospital rooms, the calm voice asking doctors practical questions, the strength his son could lean on. The cancer was real, the fear was real, but so was his choice to remain steady within it. Being unshakable doesn't mean being unfeeling. The Stoics valued appropriate emotions, grief for loss, concern for others, righteous anger at injustice. But they distinguished between initial emotional impressions, which we don't control, and sustained emotional states, which we do. You can't help the gut punch of bad news. You can help whether you remain punched. The image of the rock and waves contains another lesson. The rock doesn't fight the waves. It doesn't try to stop them or wish them away. It simply remains itself while they exhaust their energy. When you're unshakable, you're not battling circumstances, you're outlasting them. You're betting on your own resilience versus the temporary nature of any crisis. This kind of stability becomes a gift to others. In chaos, people instinctively look for someone steady. By remaining unshakable, you become a refuge for family, friends, and colleagues. Your calm creates space for others to find their own. Your steady action inspires others to act. Your refusal to panic prevents panic from spreading. In this way, being unshakable isn't selfish, it's service. The waves will come. Your life will face storms that would break most people. But you have a choice. Be driftwood tossed by every current, or be the rock that endures. The Stoics chose the rock, not because they were naturally stronger, but because they practiced being unmovable. Each small crisis prepared them for larger ones. Each wave they withstood made them more confident in their ability to withstand the next. In the end, being unshakable isn't about avoiding life's storms. It's about discovering you're stronger than any storm life can create. 10. Stop caring about things that don't matter. Your phone buzzes with another breaking news alert about a celebrity scandal. Your coworker corners you with gossip about who's getting promoted. Social media erupts over someone's controversial opinion about pineapple on pizza. Your neighbor wants to discuss every detail of local politics that you can't influence. Meanwhile, your actual life, your health, relationships, work, growth sits neglected while you spend mental energy on things that will have zero impact on your existence. Marcus Aurelius, managing an empire while surrounded by court intrigue and endless opinions, discovered a superpower. You don't need to have an opinion about everything. You always have the power of having no opinion, Marcus wrote in his private journal. This wasn't apathy or ignorance, it was strategic mental resource management. The emperor, who had to care about grain supplies and border security, realized he was wasting precious mental energy on court gossip, fashion trends, and philosophical debates that changed nothing. He developed a practice of aggressive irrelevance filtering that modern psychologists would recognize as essential for mental health. Think about how much mental real estate you donate to things that don't matter. That argument between celebrities you'll never meet. The speculation about your company's merger that you can't influence. The distant relatives' political views that enrage you. The sports debate that gets heated over hypothetical scenarios. Each opinion requires mental energy to form, emotional energy to maintain, and social energy to defend. What if you just didn't? The Stoics understood that having opinions about everything is a modern trap disguised as engagement. We've been conditioned to believe that not having an opinion means we're uninformed or apathetic. But Marcus Aurelius argued the opposite. Wisdom often means recognizing what deserves your concern and what doesn't. It's not ignorance. It's intelligent resource allocation. Take Michelle, a nurse practitioner in Portland who was drowning in outrage. She had strong opinions about everything, every political scandal, every social media controversy, every workplace drama. She'd spend hours crafting perfect arguments for hypothetical debates, getting genuinely upset about situations that didn't affect her. Her blood pressure was high, her sleep was poor, and her relationships were strained from constant intensity. Then she discovered Marcus's principle of selective opinion. She started asking, do I need to have an opinion about this? Does this impact anything I can actually control? The transformation was immediate. The celebrity scandal? No opinion needed. The office gossip about departments she didn't work in? Let it float by. The endless social media debates? Not her circus, not her monkeys. She didn't become uninformed, she became selective. She still cared deeply about her patients, her family, and her community involvement where she could make a difference. But she stopped wasting energy on irrelevant noise. Her blood pressure normalized. Her relationships improved. She had energy for what mattered because she stopped spending it on what didn't. Epictetus reinforced this with his fundamental question: is this up to me? If something isn't under your control or influence, why form elaborate opinions about it? That doesn't mean ignoring injustice or becoming callous. It means recognizing the difference between productive concern and useless mental churning. You can be aware that something exists without needing to have a stance that you defend and argue about. The modern world makes this practice particularly challenging. We're bombarded with information designed to provoke opinions. News outlets profit from outrage. Social media algorithms reward controversial takes. Everyone wants to know where you stand on everything. But the Stoics would ask, who benefits when you have strong opinions about things you can't influence? Not you. You're just exhausting yourself in mental battles that change nothing. Consider James, a software developer in Denver who realized he was spending more time arguing about programming languages online than actually programming. He had elaborate opinions about frameworks he'd never use, companies he'd never work for, and theoretical best practices for situations he'd never encounter. These opinions made him feel knowledgeable but produced zero value. When he adopted Marcus's principle, he redirected that mental energy to mastering his actual tools, mentoring junior developers, and building useful projects. His career advanced more in 6 months of focused action than in years of having opinions. The practice requires distinguishing between 3 categories: things that directly impact you, deserving full engagement; things you can influence, deserving proportional attention, and things completely outside your sphere, deserving no mental space. Your health, immediate relationships, and direct responsibilities fall in the first category. Your community involvement and professional network might be in the second. Celebrity gossip, distant political scandals, and most internet debates are firmly in the third. This isn't about becoming uninformed or disengaged from important issues. It's about being intentional with your mental resources. You can be aware of world events without needing strong opinions about every detail. You can support causes you care about without engaging in every related debate. You can be a good citizen without having a take on every controversy. The relief of not needing opinions about everything is profound. It's like decluttering your mental space. Suddenly, you have room to think deeply about things that matter instead of shallowly about everything. You have emotional energy for real relationships instead of parasocial drama. You have time for meaningful action instead of meaningless debate. Marcus Aurelius compared unnecessary opinions to clouds. Let them drift by without attachment. This doesn't make you weak or uncommitted. It makes you focused and effective. While others exhaust themselves in battles over trivia, you're building something real. While they're arguing about hypotheticals, you're creating actuals. While they're spreading themselves thin across every issue, you're going deep on what counts. In the end, not caring about things that don't matter isn't about caring less. It's about caring better. It's focusing your finite resources on your actual life rather than the infinite demands for your attention. The Stoics knew what we keep forgetting. You don't owe the world an opinion on everything. You owe yourself the wisdom to know what deserves your concern and the courage to ignore everything else. Your daily 2-minute ritual for zero worry. We've journeyed through ancient wisdom that transforms modern anxiety, discovered how Roman emperors handled pressure that would break most people, and learned why your worst days might actually be your best teachers. But knowledge without practice is like having a gym membership you never use. The Stoics knew that philosophy isn't something you think about, it's something you do. That's why I'm leaving you with a simple 2-minute daily ritual that can fundamentally change your relationship with worry. Every morning, before you check your phone, before the day's chaos begins, give yourself 2 minutes of Stoic clarity. First minute, take 3 deep breaths and ask yourself Marcus Aurelius's question. What is in my control today? Not what you hope happens, not what you're worried about, but what you can actually influence. Your effort at work, in your control. Whether you get promoted, not in your control. How do you treat your family? In your control. Whether they're in good moods, not in your control. This simple sorting immediately cuts your worry load by about 90%, because most anxiety focuses on things outside your power. Second minute, choose one Stoic principle to practice today. Maybe it's Epictetus' reminder that events don't upset us. Our opinions do. Perhaps it's Seneca's insight that we suffer more in imagination than reality. Or Marcus Aurelius' teaching about having no opinion on things that don't matter. Pick one principle and commit to applying it throughout your day. When worry arises, return to your chosen principle like a compass pointing north. That's it. 2 minutes. No complicated meditation techniques. No expensive apps, no hour-long morning routines. Just 2 minutes of intentional Stoic practice that compounds over time into unshakable inner peace. Sarah from Chicago started this practice 6 months ago. She reports sleeping better, handling work stress with grace, and feeling genuinely optimistic for the first time in years. David from New York says these 2 minutes matter more than his therapy sessions. Not because the ritual is magical, but because daily practice creates lasting change. The ancient Stoics would be amazed that their teachings reached you through technology they couldn't imagine, but they wouldn't be surprised that the wisdom still works. Human nature hasn't changed. We still worry about things beyond our control, create unnecessary suffering through our stories, and forget that peace comes from within. But now you have tools that emperors and philosophers use to navigate challenges that make our modern problems look manageable. This is just the beginning of your Stoic journey. If these ancient secrets resonated with you, if you're ready to build a life of less worry and more wisdom, then become part of our Stoic Vivu community. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of modern Stoics transforming their daily experience. Give this video a thumbs up if it helped you. It tells YouTube to share this wisdom with others who need it. And if you know someone drowning in anxiety, share this video with them. Sometimes the right philosophy at the right moment changes everything. Remember, the Stoics didn't promise an easy life. They promised that you could become the kind of person who handles any life. Your journey to unshakable peace starts with 2 minutes tomorrow morning. The question isn't whether ancient wisdom can transform modern worry. We've proven it can. The question is whether you'll take the first step. Your calmer, wiser, more resilient self is waiting. See you in the next video, where we'll explore how Stoic principles can transform your relationships. Until then, practice well, worry less, and remember, the power was always within you.